I'm Chris. I'll be your host for the day here in Cardinal House. And today we have another special guest. I know we've been having a lot of big people come up, but I'm super, super excited for Rune Realms. This is kind of kicking off the whole metaverse slash just gaming and play to earn and crypto gaming piece that we're going to start having in the next couple weeks here. But Rune Realms has something very, very cool. If you haven't seen it, definitely something to check out. But we got Carlos here. Am I pronouncing that right, or do you want me to pronounce it a little bit better?
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay, sweet. I know I'm saying it with the American accent, but
That's perfect.
but yeah. So it's really great to have you, man. And we do things a little bit differently here. So if
hmm
you're ready, we'll go through a quick, just couple rapid fire questions as we go through, just chatting about what you guys are, not what you guys are, but who you are as a person and what
hmm
got you into the sphere. But when you're
Yeah,
ready,
sure.
we'll start it off.
Yep, I'm ready. Let's
Awesome.
go.
Awesome. So as you guys know, you guys can go ahead and follow along in the AMA questions or AMA polls. But first off, science fiction or fantasy? If you had to pick one.
Fantasy.
Fantasy? Why is
hmm
that?
Um, I don't know. It's hard to create a good science fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
most science fiction steals from fantasy. So there's that.
Gotcha. Interesting. What was your favorite movie growing up?
Lord of the Rings.
Okay, I was wondering. I
Yeah,
feel like it's all the Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars debate, right?
yeah. Well, hmm, I like both, but I think that for me, like as a kid, I grew up like reading The Hobbit, right?
Uh-huh.
So there is something about that world that kind of have like a sense of nostalgia.
Yeah.
That yeah, it always like I've read The Hobbit like at least like 7 times by now, and even in terms of books, like I tend to go towards, but it's like nonfiction. I tend to go towards fantasy. Um, and yeah, like I've read like a couple of really good books in terms of sci-fi, and I'm currently reading The Snow Crash, but it's a sci-fi book like more in the metaverse side.
Mhm.
It's an interesting book, but yeah, it's like I think that like fantasy has like something different to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have to agree there. I'm 100% on the same page, but I know a lot of people would disagree with you.
Yeah,
Awesome. So action or comedy movies?
comedy for
Comedy?
sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What about a little
Um,
mixture of both?
That as well, like something like Deadpool, or even like
Mm-hmm.
Bullet Train, the movie that just came out. Yeah, I think that like that is a sweet spot. Um, the way that I think about movies most of the time is usually when I have like a very stressful week, I need to watch like something that is just like you don't need to think that much.
Yeah.
So comedy tends to go on that side, but then when it's like during the weekend, yeah, I can go like for something more hardcore, but it's like a movie during the week, then for comedy for sure.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I like it. I love comedy. Action, I also love. It depends what it is for me.
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings, I could just watch again and again. Like that is one of the few
yeah.
that's like it's that good, right? Um
I, I think that like that one thing that Lord of the Rings does really well, and that's because of like Tolkien just being an amazing writer, is
yeah.
that they can kind of transport you into that world. And you
Hmm.
can feel that you can be part of that world, and that is something that is very hard to execute.
Yes. No, I love that. I love that. And I love the thoughts that you have, especially coming into a game where you guys are trying to do something kind of similar, right? Transporting somebody into whatever world that you're building. So that's really it's just an interactive movie is really what it is. An interactive
hmm
journey. I love it.
Yeah, like
Would you
one
Oh, go
of
ahead.
my like without wanting to catch it, like one of my like big dreams in terms of like game development
Yeah.
is to one day just grab like movie directors and also like writers, put them like in a room together and say like, hey, like let's actually build a game, which is it's hard to come by because usually you have like the battle of the ego in the entertainment industry, where some people think like that the movie is superior to the game, and others think that the games are superior to movies.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for you to do that. But one day I'm just going to quote unquote bribe someone, put them in like in a cage, and be like, hey, let's develop a game that's just like a very like story driven and also like
Yeah.
super cinematic, just to give that experience. That I think that will be super cool.
That's like your lifelong dream is to
Yeah.
create that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. I love that. Have you ever played, and this makes me just wonder, have you ever played D&D or looked at Critical Role?
Watch Critical Role, never played D&D. Like
Okay.
I've watched Critical
Gotcha.
Role, I watched like even on Netflix like their series,
Yeah.
Vox Machina, like the animation series,
Hmm.
super cool. Like Mercer, he's an amazing storyteller and also an amazing
Yeah.
voice actor.
That's why I brought it
Like
up.
yeah, but yeah, I never actually played D&D.
Gotcha.
But it looks fun. But I never played it. But like I do watch like their streams and the videos in the background sometimes, so
Hmm.
it is fun. Yeah.
No, definitely. I love that. It honestly, like, it is some of the best storytelling out there, and it's crazy to
Mm-hmm.
think that you can tell this kind of story. But like when I first saw that, I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, this is wild.
Yeah. And
But
he's not just like he's a well, one being a voice actor makes it interesting the way that he tells story, but he and the entire crew, they have like a very, very like they can think super fast when it comes like to coming up with stories,
yeah, they're
which
very
is
improv
cool.
based for sure.
Like I don't know if you know this, but in Vox Machina, like the story, like the animation, they actually have scenes that were like improv during the live streams and
Yeah,
not expected at all, that they actually adapted like into the show
yeah.
as well, just as a be like, hey, yeah, like these guys are, they know what they're doing.
The
And
whole
it's like,
thing is
yeah, they
improv. Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
it's funny because they all met, everyone like that was there, like they worked in I know that Mercer worked in Overwatch. I think
Hmm.
he's the voice of McCree.
Yeah,
But if I'm not mistaken, they all met in the set of The Last of Us.
that was a
Um,
big one for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I know that they've all worked
So,
together a handful of times on, like, I know
hmm
they're really big into the anime scene. They're big into some games and some other stuff
yeah,
as well. Like Last of Us was one of those big ones too. Yeah, it's awesome. I
yeah.
definitely love it. um, next up, would you rather game or watch a movie or TV show?
Hmm. Game.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I think like again movies, like when I'm like extremely tired, I tend to go for movies.
Yeah.
But 80% of the time, I prefer to grab like to play something. And now like I got like a Steam Deck that is being even more interesting because I have like a Steam library that I never get to play, and I can just like play on the couch and while hang out with the kids as well. So yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, like the game.
Gotcha. What's your
And
game?
there is
What's
like
the most
one
recent?
thing. I've been playing a lot of like Vampire Survivors. It's like it's a $4 game. It's extremely like the graphics are like not the best, or not say
Hmm.
other word. But the game is extremely addictive. It's just like the game core loop is very interesting because
Hmm.
it's an idle game that you need to move around the map. You don't really shoot, like it shoots automatically. And then as you level up, you basically gain more abilities to basically just defeat like huge hordes of like pixel monsters.
Hmm.
But yeah, the game is super fun. And also like in the more like triple A style game, I've been playing Dying Light 2, which is it's a fun game.
Can you remind me what was that?
Dying Light 2?
Dying Light 2. Okay. I feel like I've
Yeah.
heard of that. I feel like I've heard of that.
Yeah,
Very
it's
interesting.
the game is fun. I have like as a person in the entertainment industry and working for games, you always have like your when you look at triple A games, you look at, oh, you could do this better, you could do that better.
Hmm.
But the game overall is fun. Like there are a couple of scenes that is just like repetitive and boring.
Yeah.
That I feel that like especially open world games, they should just like completely eliminate that from the gameplay. Like in part,
Hmm.
I get why they do it. They want to increase your playthrough to justify like the $50 price point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, yeah, there are things that are not worth it. But the overall game and like the story is predictable, but the overall gameplay, it's fun. I think like everyone likes to kill zombies, so.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, all right, next up, what is the first game you ever played?
Tomb Raider for PlayStation 1?
Old school.
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha. That's the first game
yeah,
you ever played? Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. Like I remember like that I ever played, yes, but like seeing my brother play, like I used to see my brother play like Sonic and also Ninja Gaiden.
Hmm.
But the first game that I actually picked up and play was like Tomb Raider on PlayStation 1, like the very first one.
The first
Yeah.
edition. Gotcha. Do you still play them
Hmm.
as they come out? Are you like always on top of it?
I do, and some like from time to time I still go back into old games as well.
Yeah.
Like even like into like PlayStation 1, and even like sometimes I even go back like into like Atari games as well. One thing
Yeah.
that I find fascinating is that as the industry evolves and as you get like more of the technology side and things are easier to execute, um, it seems to be like a add like a churn in terms of creativity as well. So before like you'll have to be like super technical in terms of how you execute things,
Hmm.
and that will spark like a different way of creativity and a different way of hooking the player into the game.
Hmm.
And now it seems to be harder to do that somehow.
Maybe because there's so many games. Yeah, that's an interesting point though.
Yeah, yeah, like too many games, and also when the tools make things easier, you tend to think less in a way.
You're lazier.
There is this interview in the Lex Friedman podcast. I'm not sure if you know his
Mm-mm.
podcast. Like talks like he usually talks about like machine learning, AI,
Hmm.
and so on. Like it's a very interesting podcast. But he was interviewing the creator of Quake,
Okay.
and they go like on how what like was super hard to create like the physics simulation back in the day, and like how they had to overcome certain things that for now is like a click of a button. But those are things that time like defined the industry, and at the same time when you need to go through that process, you end up like creating things that just like model the industry altogether.
Hmm.
So I do feel like going back like into games, um, like into older games, it makes you a better game designer overall because you can see on how people like the thought process behind certain mechanics in old games as well.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
like
interesting.
one example that I can give you like is on Tomb Raider, for example, the first one. I'm not sure if you remember that, but you were only able to move in the axes, like in the X, Y, and Z axis, but you couldn't like go into a diagonal form. So the way that
Gotcha.
you would jump is like you'll have like to do like 2 steps forward and then a backflip backwards to actually to jump. So because of that limitation, they actually build puzzles around that where you could jump backwards, slide from a rock, and then jump forward, basically to go on a ledger. So things like that, like on how they use like the creativity to basically model the game, is like super interesting to go back and look at those limitations. That now you don't even think about that when it comes to developing games.
That is funny. That's actually very interesting. No, I
Mm.
haven't seen like old school Tomb Raider played, so that's very cool though. Um, would you say that was because I mean I'll assume, but would you say that was your intro into like being a committed gamer? Was it all the way back at Tomb Raider? Or what was the first time where you played a game and it was like, this is amazing. Like I want to do something in this
Um,
sphere.
I have to. I think that for me that was. It's hard to tell, like because I'm in between like Spyro the Dragon and Pokemon.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the two was one that was like yeah, like Pokemon. I spent like a lot of time,
Yeah.
but I remember that at the time, like Spyro the Dragon, I was playing like the first one. I was like, I wish I
Mhm.
could fly with this dragon because you could just like you couldn't fly with the
Yeah.
dragon. Then
I
like on the second, I
remember.
was like, I wish I could fly with this dragon. And then finally on the third one, they implemented it. I was like, finally, you can fly, but like in limited spaces. Or like, yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, like, is when I remember that I was like, I would like to create my own game and then just like bend the rules whatever I want to do. Um, like one thing that people don't realize is that building games is extremely hard, but at the same time, um, if it's the same thing that, like, for example, when you play now, like in the pandemic, you have like everyone playing like Animal Crossing, right?
Hmm.
Um, Building a game is kind of like playing Animal Crossing because at the end of the day, you are basically building what you want to play in a way. So it becomes like super fun, especially like nowadays. You don't really need to be don't need to be a developer to actually to build a game. You have like plenty of tools like in Unity you have like blueprints and sorry, in Unreal Engine you have like blueprints, and Unity you have like visual scripting that allow anyone to go in and just like plug and play things and build things around it. That's not a very that's not like the best way to ship a game because that just makes the game heavier because it needs to go like on a virtual machine to compile the game. So you definitely like for a game that you're going to sell, you need to learn a little bit of C sharp for a combination of both. But nowadays, like the floor to enter in the and learning how to create games is super low, and one can actually go in and learn it. So it's super fun. It's a fun hobby to have. Like for anyone here, if you want to give it a try, I think you'll have a blast as well.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I love to hear it. Love to hear it. That's all the questions I had as far as like just about you so far. But as we move forward, why don't you give a quick
Mm-hmm.
intro, a little bit deeper into your background in gaming, but not so much, playing, but more on the creation of
Mm-hmm.
games and different things like that.
Yeah. So around like 2017, I was working in the gaming industry as a concept artist.
Hmm.
So for those who don't know, like concept art is basically like the pre like before the pre-production phase of the game. Like whenever you have like an ideation of a game, you need to look like how that game is going to look and also how the design language of that game will work in that world in particular. So for that, you
Hmm.
need a concept artist basically to go in and transform your words into a visual, so you can understand like one how does it look like, and also it involves a lot of problem solving because you can have like a description of like, hey, I want a sword, but then you need to discover like what is the design language behind that sword and how what it makes sense for the game.
Hmm.
Um, After that, like after a couple of like indie projects as a concept artist, I started working for a company that is called CG Master Academy, and at the time I was helping them. They are like the biggest online school for training people in VFX, animation,
Hmm.
game, and concept art as well. And at the time, I was basically helping them hire instructors because I had like a lot of connections in like Blizzard and Disney and so on.
Hmm.
So I was basically helping them like bringing in instructors to create new courses for them. So after that time, I actually became like super friends like with the founders of the company, which they are co-founders in Rune Realms now as well, Manny and Ted. And um, and then like I went on a hiatus from the gaming industry and the entertainment industry in terms of building games and being part of the gaming industry. And I was more focused in marketing. So I ended up like creating my own marketing agency, which I sold in the beginning of 2021. And when I sold the company, basically I went to a full-time marketing director at CGMA. So we are still basically pretty much like in line inside of the industry when it comes to the gaming industry, especially like training people in the gaming industry. Um, and yeah, and then Manny and Ted, both of them, they had like a very successful career in animation and games. So
Hmm.
funny enough, Ted, he actually worked on Spyro the Dragon. So he's like way older than me, and actually the youngest person in the team. And he worked on Spyro the Dragon. And when I met him, I was like, "Oh, so basically you worked like on the game from my childhood." I'm like, "Yeah," and and then like they had like a very successful career to the point that they became like senior and lead artist at DreamWorks. So Manny was the supervisor and lead 3D artist for like Kung Fu Panda, Shrek, and also like Pirates of the Caribbean. He also worked at NCSoft in Guild Wars, like the War RPG game. And then
Hmm.
Ted was a lead texturing artist and VFX supervisor for like multiple different projects, from Spyro the Dragon, also Shrek, Puss in Boots. He also worked like in terms of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show Afro Samurai.
No, I've
Like it's
never
a
heard that.
no, it's like it's an anime show, and he was the person that basically pretty much like helped create the style behind Afro Samurai. That was
Hmm.
a completely 3D, like completely 3D animation, but it looks like 2D. So he basically helped like develop that shade for the game and for not for the game for the anime and how that looks. So they have like a lot of experience in the industry, and they also have like a lot of connections in the industry. And then a while ago we just looked at like we are all looking like at Axie Infinity and also like the other
Hmm.
games in the Web3 space, and they're like, oh, that's interesting, especially because of looking in the part of like granting people like ownership of their assets. Um, it's just like the evolution of an industry overall. We thought that that was like interesting, and you wanted
Hmm.
to create something in space and help advance the space as well, and bring our expertise in terms of just basically working in the industry for like forever now, and bring that to the Web3 space. What we want to build moving forward, and we'll talk about that later as well, will be a little bit different from what we have like in the industry currently. But I think that we do believe that Web3 gaming will be the future of the gaming industry.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have to agree there. I think there's a lot of things that come with Web3 that you just can't have outside of it, right? So 10 years from now, I think that almost everything that's being developed will be moving there
Yeah, yeah.
for sure. It'd be like
Especially
comparing
when you have
like
like companies
arcade
like
games now.
Ubisoft. Yeah, definitely. And like when you have like companies like Ubisoft opening like a full division just to focus on Web3 games, you know,
Hmm.
like where the industry is going.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, like there's some massive partnerships actually coming out that people see, but I don't think they realize the extent of development happening behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes. So like Ubisoft,
Yeah.
whether it be with Hedera or with some other companies they're working with, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that is going on. It's not just, I mean, it's not like the type of DeFi partnership that we see a lot of, right? Like these things, there's actual
Mm-hmm.
building going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But
There are things that it just makes sense. Like it's an evolution that makes sense. So
yeah,
yeah.
no, for sure, for sure.
Um, I think like for like one example that I can give you that I think that it's fascinating that we'll be able to do now using like blockchain technology in games
Hmm.
is the fact, for example, let's say that I'm playing, I don't know, like I'm playing Rune Realms, and instead of Rune Realms, like I unlock like a sword, and my advantage with that sword can be on a like a ledger in the blockchain, and people can and you can basically have a record of all of the advantage that you had. And then at a certain point, when you card that item over, for example, to another game, it's kind of like having a permanent like saved game, right? When you card that item over, for example, to another game, that item can basically like evolve to a different thing because of like the of your history with that particular item, for example.
Yeah.
Right. So different things that you can do now that I think it's like it's super interesting moving forward in terms of just a technology standpoint as well.
Yeah, and that's man, it's super like it's going back to like if you ever seen Sword Art. I think everyone that's seen
Hmm.
anime has seen it, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like that concept of being able to move from one to the other, not starting from scratch, but actually taking your in-game
Hmm.
items in some way to another game, which is just it's just an awesome
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. That's easier said than done. Um, yeah. Like that. It's extremely hard to do it. Um, just in the asset standpoint, if, for example, just for the fact that if you have a game built, for example, in Unity, and then you have a game built in Unreal, that is like the biggest engines that you have in the market right now, like for
Uh-huh.
public asset, you'll need like a compiler to be able to send an item from a game to the other, and then you need to make sure that that game in particular also has that item ID in the game.
Yeah.
Um, because otherwise it won't just work. So that will have like to have like collaboration between studios and games in order to be able to port that.
Mhm.
But even for people that have like their own games and they create like a version 2 or version 3 of the game, just makes it easier for people to transfer their files without needing to start from scratch. So one example that I can give you, like I put a lot of time into Destiny 1. And when they released Destiny 2, the idea was that like Destiny 2, you'll be able to carry over your stuff from Destiny 1, which wasn't the case when they released Destiny 2. And I didn't play Destiny 2 because of that, because I had like all the legendary weapons in Destiny 1, and I would have to start over from in Destiny 2. Like
Mhm.
if they had just like if they had to use like blockchain technology, for example, to do that, it will just make it easier on their end to the point that you could just basically carry or like connect your MetaMask, for example, and you have all the
Mhm.
items there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of user-friendly things coming, both for developers and for actual, people playing those games. I 100%
Yeah.
agree. It's so interesting to me. Do you think that's the biggest piece that blockchain technology brings to gaming?
Um, no, I think that, and now the current state of the market really doesn't reflect that, but I believe that one thing that will bring will be having a less like predatory marketplace for players. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is you have like in the industry, especially like in mobile game industry, right now it's like you have a lot of like pay to win games, right?
Yeah.
And then when the game is not pay to win, that asset basically belongs to the studio. So I believe that like being a more open platform will just make will make it fair for the players in a way. So for example, Guild Wars is a game like that I played a lot. I played like when it came out like in 2012, and I basically like play at least like every year, like at least like for a couple of days, just to see what's new in the game. The first legendary weapon that they had in the game, till this day, it costs around like $150 to $200 if you're comparing their gem system to what you have to buy in game or the gold to also like, and then like compare like that to the dollar. If you try to sell that weapon outside of the game, you have the risk of one, either getting scammed, or second, that is the most likely scenario, you're going to get banned for sure by NCSoft. Um, and then if you buy in the game, you can only basically buy in the game by buying directly one gems from the studio, converting that into gold, and then basically buying the weapon. Or you can go in the route where you're going to spend, I don't know, like 200 hours or more just to try to get the gold to then buy the weapon. And even that,
Mhm.
like it took like 200 hours is a very, very like it's like if you're doing like a run that is like on a gold farm and you're basically being super lucky. Um, so I believe that what Web3 games you're allowed to do is just to open the market for players to have like a peer-to-peer transaction to whatever they want to do and have like a full ownership of their assets, right? So and at that point it starts being a place where it's either you play by the rules of the studio or you get banned because the studio wants to make money, or you play by the rules by the studio, basically by play to win. So yeah, I believe that the evolution will be in creating like a more like a fair ecosystem for players moving forward, because it will be like more
Mhm.
open as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's awesome. That is very, very cool. And like you can even have studios that are implementing their own taxes on items, right? On transactions. So
Mhm.
they could still get like make money. Like it's not something that's trying to pull everything away from the studio, but rather trying to find a fair price for individuals coming in. So I 100%
Yeah,
see where you're coming from.
I think that like the core idea is that what will end up happening is having the studio as well, kind of like a game as a service in a way,
Hmm.
where you have the game and the game has the marketplace, and you as the studio, you basically collect a fee for the transactions that happen in the game. And you as the studio also still have the power to create your own assets and sell in that same marketplace.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you're opening up for more creative people to just basically go in and sell what they want. Right. So, for example, you can go into like ArtStation right now and search for, I don't know, like World of Warcraft or Overwatch skin, and you'll find like thousands of talented artists that they create just like beautiful art that will never be in the game, because
Mhm.
one, like Blizzard is protecting their IP, and second, that person doesn't basically work in the company, so it doesn't make sense for them to add that item into the game. But if you have like an open marketplace and that artist can basically just connect into your game via an SDK, for example, upload their assets and sell to whatever price they see fit for their like NFT that will then be used in game. And you as a studio just take like a percentage from that, kind of like the same way that like Steam gets a percentage from the game, or like that Epic Games take a percentage from the like, game sale. I think that that is a fair transaction to have, and I think that that will be the evolution of the Web3 space moving forward as well. And if you think about it, that is kind of what Mark Zuckerberg is trying to do with Meta, and why he's pushing VR so hard is because he can create an ecosystem that he controls, and he gets like a percentage for everything that happens. And at that point, he's not like at the mercy of Apple and Samsung
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's a big piece too. You're right now, like, I mean, what is that? The Apple NFT store is like what, 30%, I think,
Yeah.
taxing? Like it's something ridiculous like that. And it's like, oh, hold up. This is a lot of money that you're taxing on all of these things. But yeah.
Yeah, but
So,
like
oh, go
it
ahead.
is a lot of money. But one of the things that I think interesting is you have like the whole battle between Epic Game and Apple. And yeah, I just think that that was like an idiot battle overall, because they got like way more from Apple than Apple got from Epic, like for Fortnite.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, they just yeah, they did a lot to just like lose the position that they had, and that like, that hurt them as a business, like because like Apple is one of those companies that you don't want to fight them.
Yeah.
Like like I worked like in the advertising space, like I had like my agency, and when they rolled out the iOS 14, that rollout alone made Facebook lose like $10 billion. So a company like that, you don't want to fight with them, and especially if they're providing you a marketplace for a platform that no one else can give you that. And on the other end, like it's a little bit pocket where they say like, oh, they're charging like 30%, but the Epic Games Store, they also charge like a percentage or a fee for every sale that happens
Yeah.
there. So yeah, it's just like stupid.
Yeah. That's a very fair point. Very, very fair point. You got a lot of eyes on the Apple store. Kind of branching from this though, like let's dive a little bit more into Rune Realms. I know we've been talking a lot
Mm-hmm.
about the team's background, which I think is one of the biggest pieces. A lot of people don't think about that. Like if Elon Musk created a project, everyone would invest in it, right? Like it wouldn't make sense not to.
Mm-hmm.
So the team is huge, and you guys have a very, very good background behind you. But kind of going into
Yeah,
what
and
what is Rune? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, and also just like that, like our like development, I basically talked about like the leadership team in the company, but our development like team also is like they are just like impressive and amazing. Like they won a
Yeah.
Game of the Year award in Brazil in 2021 with a game called Retro Machina. And then our Web3 developers are the team at Notify. So yeah, we have like a very strong team supporting the project.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. You guys got a little bit of everything covered. That's really, really
Yeah.
cool. Um, but yeah, kind of getting into more of what Rune Realms is. Why don't we talk about it here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So Rune Realm started like as we are a bit weird, and probably is because like we are primarily like Web2 founders, and we started bootstrapping the game like completely like, out of pocket, and we started building a game that was like Clash of Clans, and then bringing that to Web3. But the thing is, like building a game like a Clash of Clans, if people like here don't know that much about game development, it is super expensive. To create something like Clash of Clans can cost you upwards like to $800,000, and we were just like bootstrapping the project and working like on our own, like and like burning like the midnight oil, building the project. But then we were like, oh, like that's interesting, but we need to look into a way of actually see, one, if people are interested in the world that we're building, and also second, to see if something is that if it's something that the market wants, right? So with that, we decided basically to put a pause on building the Clash of Clans like game and create a minimal viable product. And that minimal viable product is basically what we are opening our pre-sale now. There is the Rune Realms Rebirth, as we call it. It's kind of like a mini game, but it's like an idle game. Now, this idle game, we basically, the game is already done. Every single aspect of the game pretty much is done. And then we decided to create actually like a mini game instead of creating an FT and then have people wait like for like 3 years to release a game. So we can at least like display our ability to bring a product to market and also like the quality of our work overall. Like I'm the first person to admit that like the mini game is not the perfect ideal product that we would like to have in terms of token, like in the tokenomics part of the game. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, like why as well. But yeah, we basically produced a mini game that is like an idle game that you basically buy like a shrine and you buy a golem, you combine them, and they basically generate tokens. It's kind of like a more DeFi game or a gamified DeFi platform, and it still has a lot of like of interesting details and psychology behind it. Where, for example, you can combine like two different types of golems. So if you combine, for example, two fire golems, it can give you like a boost in farming, for example. And our idea is after the pre-sale, especially because like we have a lot of experience in developing games, but in terms of experience in Web3 in general, we are quite new. We wanted to make sure that we can, one, release something that works super well, and then basically keep improving from there. So our goal is after the pre-sale, a couple of months later, basically release an update for the mini game that is a dungeon crawler game, where people can basically use their golems to go into the map and fight bosses and unlock like extra items and so on. While we do that, we basically continue the development of the Rune Realms, like the Clash, that is Rune Realms, like Clash of Clans style game.
Gotcha. When you say Clash of Clans style, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so it's a MMORPG game. So our idea is like you will be able, because you're basing the game in the Norse mythology, you'll be able to choose like one of the 9 factions that we have. So you have like Asgard, Nilfheim, and so on. And then each faction that you selected will give you a different playstyle in terms of your main hero. And also it'll give you a different server on the map. So the idea is that you build your own base. So you start basically building your base, like increasing your defenses, building your troops, and so on. And then you can battle other players for resources. One thing that we are doing different from Clash of Clans, though, is having what we call Realm Wars. That is because our resources in the game will be finite during a season. You will have to basically to fight with other realms in order to secure the resources in the game. And we want to make that game more like marketplace driven, where ideally the players will interact more with the marketplace in the game than anything else. So that's why we are going to the direction of like one, having like finite resources in the map, and also have like a profession in the game. So for example, if you are if you like are a miner, you can only create items with rocks. Therefore, if you need something that is made out of wood, you need to buy from another player. So create like an internal and organic economy inside of the game based on professions and also on limited resources in the map. But yeah, the base is that is like you have like a world where you build your base, and then you have like your clan and you have like your realm, and then you battle other people for resources so you can get stronger. That's the core loop of the game.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love it. It is a very, very cool concept. And I think you guys are not alone in trying to start taking these, because right now it's just tech and concepts, right? But to start taking these tech and concepts and putting them together. So it's very, very cool.
Yeah.
So Now, we know that your project is one reliant on the 800K, roughly 800K raise, right? With
Mm-hmm.
everything being what it is, what do you get when you actually purchase, or get into the whitelist here with Rune
Yeah.
Realms?
So in our whitelist, like we initially had like a different pre-sale price for the whitelist where we wanted to basically release like signets, and those signets we are pricing them around like $400. And the reason for that is because they will give you like a significant advantage in the game. However, like because of we're trying to look into how we can make it like a more like fair system even for people joining later on in the project. Especially because like the project will have a revenue share component for the entire company, not just like for Rune Realms as a project, but for the company itself. We need to make it in a way that is like more fair for people overall. So what you're doing for our pre-sale is we're giving like a $5 discount in the for the pre-sale, where the original entry point price for the project is like $40 because you need two boxes. You need like a golem box and you need a shrine box. So we're giving like for anyone in pre-sale, they can buy like that set for $35. And then people that are whitelisted, they also get like a 1% farming boost. We removed the common golems from the boxes and also the common shrines. So you can only like mint upper tiers, starting from uncommon, then unique and rare, and so on. And yeah, so there is basically the two main advantages. One, like the $5 discount, the farming boost, and also the allowing you to basically to unlock a higher tier golem and shrine during the whitelisted pre-sale. That keeping in mind that the way that we are building the system in terms of the revenue share in the project is your variety of the golem and the shrine will like it takes that in consideration as well. Because it's basically how you build your position in terms of your quote unquote mining power in the game, and then that will be translated into the revenue share model. So yeah, it is still a big advantage compared to someone that is not in whitelisted, but it is a far less it's way more balanced compared to what we had before.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So you guys essentially giving the discount, and then you're also giving some in-game perks, and then on top of
Mm-hmm.
everything, you have a little bit of a revenue share. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
revenue share real quick, because that's the most unclear piece. What
Mm-hmm.
is the revenue share looking like? Are there any specific percentages you guys have already laid out? Are things still
Yeah.
changing?
Yeah. So this first game, like it's and like our first like Medium article, you guys can go back and read that as well, like on what we believe in terms of the industry overall. Like this first game, it is a very like normal play to earn game that you had in the market, where you have your assets and then your assets will basically create like a token emission and mine tokens. Um, we that isn't a model that is sustainable. We as a team, if you're being completely honest, we actually don't really like that model. However, it's something that as a bootstrap idea for a project, it works very well. But for a long-term project, it doesn't really align like with what we want to build. It also doesn't align with our 10-year plan for the project. So after the first year of releasing Rune Realms Mini, and the reason that it's the first year is because after a year we are going to release the Rune Realm Clash, and what we're going to do is we are going to completely kill the mini game, which will also stop the emission of tokens for the game. So your assets in the game will basically be able to carry over to the next game. So you'll be able to carry over your golems and shrines to the Rune Realms Clash. But in terms of the token emission itself, we are going to completely kill that and also kill the game itself. So we can focus in building the Rune Realms like Clash. And what we're doing is, because we're going to kill the emission of tokens, and we are going to transition into a system where our tokens at that point, they will act more like a hard currency in a game. So think about like your normal like gem system in a game, for example, where you buy gem to advance in like in your like quest, or you basically need a gem to advance like your progression in the game. But it's a reversible gem system where if you want basically to sell that back, you can. You don't need to be locked into the game and be there if like 10 gems are like just there, and then yeah, you can basically sell that back. So that's the idea.
Interesting.
And because we're going to stop the emission of tokens, we want to look into um, how we still support like people that helped us basically create our main project, because it will be super unfair that someone, for example, enters like a week before and 2 weeks later we basically close the project, right? So we have a cap of people of the maximum amount of players that we are going to allow in the mini game. I cannot disclose that yet because we are still running the numbers on that, but it'll be between 2,000 to 5,000 people at all time high that we are allowed to do that. And then what that will do is for everyone that enters the game, they'll automatically be able to join the revenue share model, where after that first year, whatever we do as a company, not for Rune Realms as a game, but for the entire company, we have like a 15% revenue share model. So that includes like we using our studio to create games for third-party studios. So because like that's something that we do right now, we actually have like the game studio creating other games as well, but it's just like Rune Realms. There's like the studio as a company or as a service, and also for any Web2 game that you release, you also get like a revenue share of that. The reason that we are doing that is because again, like we want to make it like fair. So if someone, for example, were not able to recoup like their initial investment from the game, from just basically like from the tokens, they will eventually be able to do that from the revenue share.
Gotcha. Very, very interesting. So you got like a little bit of combined stuff going on. You got the revenue share,
Yeah.
you got the token prices, you got the token itself with the initial pre-sale. Got it. Okay. Awesome. And so what is the next game on the roadmap? Because Rune Realms, like you said, it's more of that like it's more to raise the funds for everything else going on, correct?
Yeah.
So what's coming next?
Yeah, so we're going to release like the mini game first, and then from there we are going to release the second version of the mini game where we include like a more gameplay mechanic to it, just to make it more fun and not just like a passive thing that people go there to manage a farm, but to actually have like a gameplay on top of it. And yeah, like the next day we'll be releasing like Rune Realms Clash itself, which that itself is like it's a big project, is a bigger project than people can imagine, especially because it's a MMORPG game which will involve like a lot of people in a server. Is a very like big scale game, and if you look, for example, I usually like compare it to Clash of Clans because it's the most well-known game in the market, but Supercell, they've been with Clash of Clans for 8 years now, I believe, just like updating the game, or like 10 years. Yeah, so that will be something that will take a lot of our time, but we do have still the part of the vision where we act as a studio for other companies, and we want to also start basically creating games like for Web3, for other Web3 companies as well. That's something that we are adding to our roadmap and we are looking at. But our main focus is one, build like the Rune Realms Clash, but on top of that, what we want to do, and I think that is something that we don't communicate enough, is we want to make sure that we build a ecosystem that other people can basically plug and play and create their own scenes. What I mean by that is, for example, is basically the creation of either an SDK or an engine that allow people to basically grab what we built and then build their own like games and build their own assets for our games, and then have like a live marketplace where everyone can participate in. So even if you're not
Jeez.
a gamer, you can go in, and if you are an artist, if you're a musician, you can go in and you can create pieces for the game that can then interact with the game. So you can create like a theme song for the game, and people can just basically buy that and add that to their village. You can create like a completely different themes for the game, and then people play that, add that to their village. So that's what we actually want to build, is an ecosystem that allow people to plug and play with what you already built and our world. That's why we have like a vision for Rune Realms like for 10 years as a game, like Rune Realms Clash as a game. And we are not really thinking about like releasing a second game or a third game after that, because the scope of what we want to create for that game in particular is like, it's huge.
Yeah, that engine. If you like, even just the engine itself is a. I mean, that is crazy. I mean, just think about like how much development it takes to create something like Unreal Engine, right? To create an engine that could actually integrate all these files into a game and just allow people to just upload their NFTs and have it convert over. That's crazy. That is awesome.
Yeah. So the way that we actually see we building this is we are actually building the game in Unity. So the way that we actually see we building these is if we don't build an engine completely from scratch, build something that will just be kind of like a plugin for Unity, where people can download Unity and then they can still interact. But the idea is like, for example, let's say that you have like our characters, right? You have like Odin and Thor, and you have like all of our characters in our styling. Like, oh, this style is cool, and you want to build your own game. That it's not particularly like a MMORPG game. Let's say that you want to build, I don't know, like you want to build a Metroidvania style game with our characters. The idea is like, if you grab like our assets and inside of basically our plugin, we want to try to make it in a way that you can just basically change, and you don't really need to be a developer. That is like the hardest part to do, is we want to make it easier for people that are non-developers to actually create their own things out of from our game. So I don't know if you played Overwatch, or if you played Overwatch.
If I have not. But actually,
Yeah.
one of our team members, one of our founders, has played very competitively in Overwatch. Zach, I mean, you might be able
Okay.
to tell him what place he was at, but go ahead.
Okay. So like Overwatch, they have something that they call the workshop. And inside of that workshop, by changing a couple of slides in the game, you can build a completely different game. So there are people that they build like Pokemon inside of Overwatch, right? So yeah, like where you play like as Anna, and then you use like the E ability, and it launches like a player, and then both players basically battle each other. Yeah, it's super interesting. Like you can, like by tweaking a certain thing in the game, you can build a completely different game. So the idea is to build like a plugin that feels like kind of like the workshop in Overwatch, where people, even if they are not like developers, they can go in and play with what they have as assets, and they can release their own game, and then they can monetize that game the way that they feel they like, whatever they want to do with it. We don't care, because the underlying part of it is that for us, you can, like, we allow you to develop your own currency, but it will be hard coded that in some part of the game you need to use runes as a token, right? So that always has like ends up basically adding back a positive feedback loop to our project overall. So and yeah, like that's the goal. It just allow people to empower creativity. That's the best way that I can put it.
No, I love it. I love it. I love the way that you guys are going about things. You have a very interesting model, but I think you also have your reasons for it, and that's super, super important. So I really do appreciate all that kind of stuff. Is there anything we haven't touched up on yet with what Rune Realms has coming?
Not that I can think of. Let me think. I think that's pretty much it. Like the mini game like is super straightforward. It's just like it's a idle game. But I think that I think that for even for the mini game, I think that people will find it super interesting in the way that mechanics work overall. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not much I can say about mechanics without giving like too much of an advantage to people. I want people to basically to go in and figure out like things on their own.
No, that's perfect. That's
But
perfect.
yeah, like there are a couple of cool mechanics in, even though it's a mini game, it is like super gamified. That it will be a fun experience, like building the farm itself.
Like just different strategies is what you're talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm excited. I'm really, really happy about it. So, how can somebody get involved? I know you said that you'd be giving out whitelists to everybody coming in
Mm-hmm.
today. So, that is very,
Yeah.
very awesome. But how can somebody get involved and when can they get involved?
Yeah, like so for anyone that wants like a whitelist spot, you can just like open a ticket on our Discord and we will give you the role. We are going to do the pre-sale for the project in either mid-December or mid-January. We are a little bit of a different team overall. Like we build things slower, but we build things right. That's the only thing that I can say. So right now we have like the mini game completely done, and we could do like the pre-sale tomorrow. But we actually want to polish a couple of more things and also like build a better community overall around the project. So we're taking our time. Like we are not like in a rush to release the mini game either, which is weird because in the NFT space you're always like about like hype. You want to do things right because at the end of the day, like this is it's a company and we are treating as a company. So we need to make sure that whatever we put in the market, it actually like fits our standard. So yeah, like we're shooting like to either mid December or mid January. Um, that's why we're just like if anyone wants to get to be part of the project, they can just open a ticket, request a whitelist spot, and then once you open like the wallet collection, we just like everyone let everyone know as well.
Yeah. So, make sure you guys do that if you're interested. Otherwise, I mean, honestly, I'd love to have you on again when it comes closer and we can talk a little bit more of the details. I think you guys got everything
Mm-hmm.
fleshed out, though. It sounds like you already have the whole thing set up, like you said. It's just waiting for the right time, making sure everything else is you're dotting your I's,
Yeah.
crossing your T's, making sure that you guys are launching in a traditional, solid fashion, not like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
crypto projects that over promise and under deliver.
Yeah, yeah. Like that's for us super important. One, like our team, it's like entirely doxed, and second, we are all Web two develop like Web two like founders. So
Hmm.
we have a lot in line like to for the project. So we want to make
Yeah.
sure that whatever we are releasing, like it's doing super well. Especially because like our main company, like it just passed through a very public acquisition. So that's puts more pressure on our end as well. Um, and yeah, we just like we want to make sure that everything that we're doing just has like it meets our standard. That's why we like the project has been in development for a little over like 2 years now. So like
Hmm.
the ideation part of the project, like and then for a year, like we spent like a year creating like the mini game, which is like it's again it's a very simple game, but again we took like a year to build that game just to make
Hmm.
sure that we had everything in the way that we wanted to have, like in terms of visuals and mechanics of the game and so on. Um, and yeah, so like we again like we are not like in the rush of like launching the project. We just want to do things right. That's our main goal.
Yeah. I mean, what is it they say? You can have something fast, good, or cheap, and you can only
Yeah.
pick two of the three, right? You guys are taking it
Mm-hmm.
slow and making it good, and so
Yeah.
those are kind of what you guys are going for, and because of that's why you need the money because it's going to be expensive to do it well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly love the way that you guys are kind of going, and it's really, really interesting to see how this all unfolds. But thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate you, man, and I'm sure that we'll have you guys on again in the future.
No worries. Hopefully we can have one. It's so funny because I've been doing DMAs by myself. I need to
Yeah,
start bringing Ted and Manny into the conversation.
let's do it.
The thing is that like again, like as I mentioned, like we had like to an acquisition company, so
Yeah,
everything is just like hell on earth right now because it's like pivoting like the main business and our time basically got compressed to a lot. And then there is
yeah,
the part of the time zone as well that doesn't really help. So, but like hopefully I can bring like in the next one I can bring them into here. They can also share a little bit more about their experience in the gaming industry overall,
let's do it.
because it's always funny to see like people. Oh, so you worked in this project? That's super cool. It's like, yeah,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to do it, even if it's just chatting about yourselves and just talking through gaming in the Web3 space. I think that would be awesome. But
yeah,
but
uh,
yeah, either way, I'm sure we'll have some chats soon.
yeah, definitely. No,
Awesome, awesome. Well,
yeah,
thank you for
I
coming
would
on.
like to chat again like soon. And yeah, like if anyone like needs anything like on our end, as well, like you can just like ping me if you like. Again, like if you are developing a game right now for Web3 space and you need like either an advice or you need like someone to talk to, you can just reach out to me and we can have a conversation. So I think that like the space is super cool, and we definitely want to inspire more people to build in space as well. So if anyone
Awesome,
here is like developing a game or thinking about developing a game, let me know. We can just chat, and if you need advice, we can always help as well.
awesome, awesome. I love to hear it. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, and we will be chatting again soon. Have a good one, man. I really do appreciate you for
You
coming on.
too. Thank you very much.